So, BlizzCon 2017 is right around the corner, and with the announcement of no Diablo announcements, I suppose, and no indication of anything major for the other franchises, all eyes have fallen on Warcraft and the new WoW expansion that we'll almost certainly hear of. And while Legion has thus far been an amazing expansion, and I'm very excited for whatever's coming next, it's no secret that WoW is an aging game, and I think Blizzard are really starting to hit the limits of what they can do with it, both mechanically and in terms of a storytelling vehicle. My name is Shuppzy, and while everyone else is busy with air quotes leaks and expansion speculation, I thought it might be fun to think ahead, not just to BlizzCon this year or probably even next year, but to whatever far-flung soon TM time Blizzard decides to bring the series back to its roots, with an RTS Warcraft 4. There's already been some interesting job postings and staff moves within Blizzard that have given some hope of Warcraft 4 being already in development, but in development can be tricky to define. Regardless of all that though, there's a central challenge to making Warcraft 4, and I do not envy the designers who have to find some way around it, which is, how do you follow on from World of Warcraft, a game of such massive scale which for 13 years has been churning through plots, settings, characters, themes, everything, at a, especially recently, breakneck pace. To try and probably poorly illustrate the relative scope, think of the Warcraft IP as a series of those Russian nesting dolls. Warcraft 1 is about the size of your finger, 2 would sit in your palm, 3 takes up a bit more than your hand, and WoW? You can walk inside of it. So for a prospective designer, you're left with the incredibly challenging questions of where you could go and what you could do with the game, and at least as I see it, there's 2 options. A number of different ways to go about them, but fundamentally 2. The first would be to set the new game on another planet entirely. Not Azeroth, it's too well explored and too familiar. For an example, we'll go through a quick fan concept outline, and fair warning, from here on I'm going to be discussing spoilers for the end of Legion, so I'll leave a note if you want to skip ahead. With Sargeras locked away at the end of the current expansion, and the Burning Legion losing its ability to quickly regenerate its losses via the Argus World Soul, the Army of Light, and by extension the Horde and Alliance, have suddenly become nearly unchallenged spacefaring powers. And there's one thing that could get these factions and races to send troops off to a distant planet: the discovery of a new, untainted World Soul. From there, a lot of the systems and story pieces fall into place themselves, I think at least. We know Blizzard likes having a handful of radically different factions with intertwining campaign objectives in their RTSs, so you could have something like the Horde and Alliance either together or 2 separate entities, both trying to secure and safeguard the new Titan, the armies of the Void trying to plant old gods onto the planet and corrupt it, and perhaps the remnants of the Burning Legion, led by either Archimonde or Manaroth. And of course, we can't forget the natives of the planet, wondering what all the fuss is about. Story-wise too, it lets Blizzard bring back another trope they seem to quite like, which is the villain winning, or at least a very bittersweet ending, which is something that can't really be done within an MMO because of the need for a consistent world and constant player progress. Even if our hypothetical planet goes up in an earth-shattering kaboom, then WoW would be able to continue on just fine because it's not Azeroth. And in fact, many of the characters could then be transferred back over to WoW again, especially if they prove fan favourites. An alternative form of this option would be to make the game a prequel and set it back in time. The Troll Wars are an example I've seen pop up from time to time because it has a healthy number of potential factions, as well as characters we know the names and general stories of, but that could be fleshed out to something really cool. The second option sounds much simpler, and I know a lot of people in the WoW lore community who advocate for this one. Nuke everything that happened after the end of the Frozen Throne. Take all the events and storylines of WoW and decanonize them. Make them an alternate timeline, say it was all a dream, just in some way make it its own thing. But it's a very polarizing decision, and it could potentially hurt the series as a whole. For my part, I certainly believe it's the easiest way to go about things, and it's not like Blizzard would be dumb enough to scrap all that world building and then not borrow heavily from it, just like they did with the RPG books. But it does sour a little bit, thinking that all our knowledge and experiences in a world over years and years end up mattering for nothing. Well, now you might be thinking, how is this even an option worth considering then? Well, a lot of it has to do with not being painted into a corner by decisions made in an MMO. As much as I love WoW lore, it does get quite messy, and simply the focus on playable content, that is, having the players do things and be a part of everything going on in the world constantly, makes it hard to tell stories. Build up a world? Easy. There's almost no better video game vehicle for expanding the scope and scale of your IP than an MMO. Tell an individual story with nuance, depth, and character arcs? Much more difficult, because the players aren't the characters being affected by that story, so things end up being much more broad strokes and melodramatic. See Thrall's Cataclysm arc for an example. So seeing various events, characters, and moments that we all know made more coherent and overall just polished up to that Blizzard shine could be awesome. For argument's sake, let's also provide an example for this idea. After the events of the Frozen Throne, the Night Elves, the Horde, and the humans of Theramore are all trying to find their place in the world, following the defeat of the Legion and the loss of the World Tree. But then, people start disappearing in the night, and fights break out fueled by old grudges. Enter Deathwing in disguise, stirring up conflict between the factions while growing the Twilight's hammer and building power for the ritual he'll use to break the world. So yeah, a quick and dirty concept mostly mixing vanilla and Cataclysm, but we see more of Deathwing as the master manipulator that I think was sorely missed in Cata, while also providing a clear framework for RTS style battles, escalating from small skirmishes to all-out war. In summary, while some doubt it'll ever see the light of day, I'm confident that we'll get a Warcraft 4 game at some point, and I'm very excited and also maybe a little nervous for what it'll look like when it comes. Once again, my name is Shuppzy, and I hope you enjoyed this little speculation experiment. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas on what's coming next for WoW and the Warcraft series as a whole in the comments, and please feel free to subscribe for more one-offs like this or just more lore and game design stuff in general. Thank you all for your time.